To talk about some of the films I saw at Frightfest. I ended up seeing 8, and all of them were free. And in some cases, it's just as well they were free. I can tell you that. A big film on the opening evening of Frightfest on the Thursday was Demonic, which is the new Neil Blomkamp movie. Obviously, District 9, Chappie, Elysium. His new movie. So it's his first movie since Chappie, and fair to say his first proper horror movie. Although it does have the premise itself has a very sci-fi sort of feel, the actual setup, but then it sort of goes into horror later on. So it is his first attempt at a horror movie, and he sort of claims he's been influenced by things like Paranormal Activity. The special effects, at least, because there's a virtual reality scenes in it, he did on his computer during lockdown, and he says apparently the reason is because he just wanted to get a film out, so he was doing the effects on his computer. And the story basically is that Carrie Pope, who was also in his film Elysium, she plays this young woman who's been estranged from her mother for like the past decade. The character is contacted by a doctor or scientist and is informed that she must come and see her mother, because to the best of her knowledge, her mother has been in like a care home for a while, has a mental illness, is very ill in general, and obviously that they haven't really had much of a relationship the last 10 years. So she obviously comes and she finds out that she's been involved in this experiment. And this is where we get into the virtual reality plot. Older mother's in a virtual reality world, and that the only way she can talk to her is to go inside that world. And I have to say, she doesn't actually take much convincing. I'll say that first of all. Bearing in mind, she seems to hate this woman as well. But she agrees to it because, of course, there would be no film if she didn't. And she goes into this virtual reality world. And what then happens is her going to this world then sets off a chain of supernatural events that start happening in her own world, so in the real world. And there's stuff where she's not quite sure if it's in her head or if it's really happening, like something that keeps happening with her best friend Sam, who appears to become very sort of clingy and obsessive. I think it's fair to say Neil Blomkamp will never make a worse film. I think it's highly unlikely. And just going back to previous weeks, what did we say the cardinal sin was, Rachel?
For a film to be boring. Oh dear.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, general film, but especially a horror movie.
For a horror film. Mm-hmm.
And that's
no.
It's absolutely dull.
Disappointing.
Yeah, the characters are dull. The dialogue is kind of clunky. There's some really bad dialogue. It's worth saying Blomkamp wrote this as well. He wrote and directed it. And I mean, I think the acting's okay. I think Carrie Pope's quite good. I think she's sort of doing her best, but her character just isn't really given anything. And there's this one actor who in the film who is really bad, and he's very wooden, but he also has this uncanny knack in the exact opposite way of what he should be. So if it's meant to be like a dramatic line, he does it in a super deadpan sort of way, like he's not breathing basically, or he's sleeping. And it's the total opposite if it's meant to be just a normal sort of line. He delivers it in quite a hammy, over the top way. So he wasn't very good. His character was extremely boring. He sort of plays like someone she used to be in a relationship with, who kind of knows what's going on, or claims to know what's going on around this experiment and the supernatural. So it's very, very boring. I probably could have forgiven a lot in the film if it wasn't so boring. It still had a whole host of problems. The other main problem is I just don't think Blomkamp can do horror. You know, we've said this before, you know, it takes a certain hand. And
Yeah.
obviously, he's very adept at doing sci-fi. He's proven that. But different genres. And yeah, it's not really scary. I didn't really find it suspenseful. I didn't really find it scary. There's no real style. It doesn't really have a distinct style, which you would expect from like a Blomkamp movie. So as I said, the writing's quite bad. One point which was made by someone I was talking to, another volunteer, which I think may be a good point, is that if you look at something like District 9, which he'll probably never better, there's a good chance he'll never do a better film. But if you look at something like that, I think maybe he was okay writing that because it's sort of basically a sci-fi version of real life sort of politics. And he obviously grew up in South Africa and probably witnessed like apartheid. So I think in a
Yeah.
way he was comfortable using like the metaphor of sci-fi and like monster movies for that sort of politics. But maybe if he steps outside of that, he's not so good. Maybe he's not the best writer. So he could have maybe done with a script sort of writer helping him out. And the other thing, which again is really surprising, is the virtual reality looks really cheap. It doesn't look very good. And
Oh,
obviously, he apparently did it on his computer. Now, nowadays, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can do really good virtual realities on your computer, but it just sort of shows that he just did it on on like his, well, whatever laptop. From the fact then the film isn't very scary, I think it's also a sign that he maybe doesn't understand the horror genre in general, like the conventions, because he's caught between two stools. I think he was trying too hard to make kind of his most out there wacky sort of movie that was really going to try and be radical. But
mm.
on the other hand, he was caught trying to do like horror prestige as well. And because he, on this evidence at least, doesn't understand the genre, then that didn't really work. So it didn't really work on either sort of level. And yeah, it's a real dud. I can't believe a Blomkamp movie is this bad.
Oh dear.
Um, and yeah, extreme, as I said, extremely boring.
Mm.
So Demonic, which I think might already be out. I mean, I think I heard the box office yesterday, and it's at about number 60
Okay.
or something. I guess
Okay.
because it's a really small release, but you know,
Mm.
I mean, maybe it'll get a bigger release later, but anyway, it's not very good. The latest Neil Blomkamp movie. If you disagree with my thoughts, you can tell me in the comments below.